Good afternoon, everybody. Very happy to have you here. You're very courageous. We hope to have sufficient energy to run through this last session. And of course, we would like to start by introducing ourselves quickly. Tell us, who are you?
So, as we were saying, you're very courageous. You've lasted till this last bit. So we want this to be very interactive and really lively because, you know, it's getting late. It's the last day. It's been incredibly successful, but also content-driven. So don't hesitate. You just, you know, shoot with questions. We want, you know, the public to be here. When you had the electricity cut off, I felt that was a bit like in Lebanon, and you could hear the generator behind, and I thought, all those people left behind, it's a bit like when you're in a refugee camp and you can't hear there because there's no electricity. So shoot with questions. My name is Cristina Davies, and I lead the private sector partnerships for the UN Refugee Agency in Switzerland.
And my name is Daniel Maselli. I work at the Swiss Agency for Development and Cooperation. By training, I'm a biologist, and I have a PhD in geography. But I'm currently looking after networks, thematic networks, water, climate change, and environment at our institution.
So the title of this Verbier Art Summit 2020 edition is Resource Hungry, Our Cultured Landscape and Its Ecological Impact. Very powerful title. I think that it all means many things to several different people, and I wanted to ask you, Daniel, what that does mean in your SDC language, or according to your perspective.
I would like to start by mentioning that the legal act for our agency was created in 1976. Of course, the first mandate is to alleviate poverty in different places of the world. But at the same level, there is another paragraph in this legal act that says that we should look after the sustainable use and maintenance of natural resources. So these are actually at the same level, both poverty alleviation and taking care of resources. So we're in the middle of that topic and issue.
Thank you very much, and I think that our mandate is slightly different, but we can see that being a refugee also has a landmark on the environmental footprint. But I'll let you continue.
Well, let us first think about what does it mean if we speak about hunger. It means that we need something, but actually when we speak about hunger, we normally just have appetite. And we've been talking about resources yesterday and today, but I would like to focus on a specific one, a little more, on water. I think it's not only resource scarcity and hungriness, it's thirst that we have. And we are actually creating more thirst in other places. I mean, there's been just a recent report published that says water a matter of survival. It's a global report, and it shows how important the challenge of maintaining water as a key element for life is really a threat. I gave you a figure for Switzerland. We've just had a report last year that told us that 2/3 at least of our groundwater is already no more clean because of agriculture, because of different practices. So even a country that has a reputation to be a clean country has issues with water. And if we look at where the water comes from and what we use it for, then actually even if we are the water tower of Europe, we are dependent on water because only 18% of all we do is supported by our own water. 82% of our water footprint is actually outside Switzerland. So we become vulnerable as well, because if water is no more available in other places from where we get services and products, then we are at risk as well.
Thank you, Daniel. You also have two other perspectives, no, for the SDC?
Yes, well, I would like to introduce an idea. I mean, we need to come away from looking at problems. It's true, we are looking at problems, but we need solutions. And we don't need only to talk about solutions. We really need to foster action that really changes things. And the previous talk was talking about, was mentioning the importance of change. But I would like to say that what is more needed than that is actually transformation. Because if you change something, it's like you keep the same thing, but you modify it a little bit and it's changed. But we need fundamental, systemic transformation. And if this does not happen, we will not be able to solve these problems. I'll give you an example. I mean, with water, it's clear. We were talking and saying, yes, we need fresh water, we need to supply hygiene, we need to have toilets, etc. This is the core mandate you could think of an agency like ours. But our global program, Water, actually, is trying to do something different in addition. We have launched an initiative that is called Blue Peace. And Blue Peace means that we want to see water not as an agent that can trigger tension and conflicts, but actually that can become a trigger, a vector of stability and prosperity and peace in the 21st century. It sounds a bit difficult, but if we don't transform water from a problem into a solution, we're yet caught in the current situation with lots of dichotomies, lots of contradictions, where we can't really find a good solution, a sustainable one. Is that enough?
Enough.
Good, then let us...
And your third point?
Well, I wanted to dive into concrete examples, but maybe we come back to that later. I think just for you to know what it means more concretely, the Blue Peace. We have been launching a movement. We have taken 2 hotspots on Earth. We have gone to Central Asia. I mean, you know probably, some of you, the situation there where you have the big countries who are resource rich in coal, in gas, in oil, like Kazakhstan, Uzbekistan, etc. And you have the 2 poor houses, Tajikistan and Kyrgyzstan, who are the water towers, but else than that they have nothing. And they want their water to create energy during winter time, while the bigger neighbors, they want the water in summer to grow their agricultural products. So there's already there quite a contradiction on when, for whom, and for what to be using the water. And that's where we try to actually have a dialogue at different levels, from the ministries and ministers down to the local population. And we've also been involving youth. We've created in Kazakhstan, in Astana 2 years back, the World Youth Parliament for Water. And it's with youth from all the region, the country there. And they actually have a different approach. They sit together, they don't think they're Kazakh, they're Uzbeks, they're Kyrgyz, they're Tajik, they're just youth of that region. And they want to see a future for themselves. So this was the third point, in case you wanted 3. We can go on now. Tell us your points.
So from the UNHCR perspective, if you think about it, I started working 8 years ago from the Paris agency. 8 years ago is long, and it's very short in time. At the time, we had 45 million people under our protection. And I want people to wake up and to give me a guess of what today you believe are the number of people that we are protecting. 45 million 8 years ago. I want some guesses, please. Anyone is courageous? Okay, not that quick. Today, we've arrived to 70 million people. 70 million, I could say that it's, 9 times the population of Switzerland. That is the population of the largest country in Europe. But I get lost in the figures, because what I think that we tend to forget is the harshness of every person that is forced to flee their home overnight because they're not secure anymore in their country. And I want to do that with a link, because it's a resource-hungry 2020 edition of the Verbier Art Summit. Energy is an absolutely essential need. Before, we had some of the speakers that couldn't be talking, and I was struggling. I was there at the end, and I was thinking, gosh, I can't hear what they're saying. It's one thing to not hear what you're, in a conference where you're cozy in a nice hotel. It's another thing to not be able to charge your mobile. But when you're in a refugee setting, whether you're in what we call urban settings or in a refugee camp, it changes your life if after dusk you don't have electricity. You can't prepare a meal for your family. Your kids cannot do their homework because there's no light, there's no electricity, and let alone go to the latrines at night because you're at risk for your own person. So it poses really threats on your own health. That's one thing. Obviously, people are also struggling to get the first source of energy possible, and basically it's out of non-renewable energies and use of biomass fuels. So what that leads us to is to very dangerous uses and to health issues, because some people are using, cooking stoves that are, bad for your lungs, and there's a lot of repercussions on them. So basically, what I want to also say, I don't want to bash on people. This is not, I say, a session where we want you to feel bad. We want you to see that you can be part of the solution. I think that it's also seeing that we have a program that is meant to transition our energy to provide more energy to refugees, but also to host communities, to provide them with electricity. So this action plan is an action plan of about $100 million, and we think that the private sector can be part of that solution. It spans 12 key operations, we call them 12 key countries, and it involves giving access to energy to people in emergency settings. I think we all still have in mind what happened to the Rohingyas a couple of years ago, or even 5 years ago. We think of Syria. So energy, clean access to energy in emergency settings is absolutely key. We also want to electrify camps. And if you think of what the private sector can do, then I have a very good video for you that we could show. In Jordan, for instance, the Azraq camp that was funded by the IKEA Foundation is a renewable solar plant energy. So we can come up with solutions. What I mean to say here is, let's not bash at what we've done, the previous generations. I think that we need to think of what we can do next. Video, please. He's my technical expert. Thanks, Daniel.
We see so many things by that time. And that, I'm not worried about myself. I'm worried about my children's self and my family. Because of my family, I will build my house. When we go back to our country, tree is here. It will grow. It will be a green again.
We'd like to open this floor to questions, to comments, because we really feel that, you can bring ideas, you can bring comments. We don't want this to be the last session was about the different forms of art, and we don't want to feel that we're the ones in front of the opera house.
Why?
So
we're not yet finished. It's an intermediary QA, very short, 1 or 2 points, right?
Absolutely.
If there's anybody who has, please, 1 or 2 reflections or comments, questions, and then we continue.
I can hear you, but yeah.
Just speak close.
I hate to say they don't really look like what we saw in the video. Is this better? Can you comment on some of the challenges of being a large white Western organization and the backgrounds that we all come from, and trying to help and provide solutions for the problems that our cultures have created for other cultures that are then displaced? Can you comment on some of the challenges of that? Like, because I hear what you're saying, and we're speaking here, and it's such a pleasure, but actually on the ground, it often doesn't really play out like the ideas that we're talking about, especially, I think, when we import Western theories into these multicultural contexts. I'd love some insight from your actual daily work.
Thank you. I think you said several interesting things. First of all, you know, people think UN, people think bottom down. We're a very horizontal organization, and the way we work is that we coordinate the international response. So what does it mean? It means that when you go to a country, there is an emergency, immediately after we do a call for proposals with local NGOs who are the ones who know the reality in the field. The situation, and I was there last year, let me tell you, and I've also actually lived in Athens, is absolutely appalling. It's appalling. I personally feel as a European, it's embarrassing. It's not only a question of funding, because if I could tell you that, you know, in certain situations, like in South Sudan, I've been to Turkey, and I can tell you that it's better out there than, you know, on this side of Europe. And I think that it's a lot to do with, you know, political affairs. And so it's not only a question of funding, but overall, if I can say something, you know, we always work with community leaders wherever we have an emergency setting, and we let them lead. And we've made mistakes in the past. In the 1960s, 70s, we would come up with an amazing, you know, shelter that would be technologically sound, probably not sustainable at the time. You didn't talk about the green issue. But then the refugees would say, this is not ours, you know, we don't want it. So now basically what we want is, you know, we have what we call group leaders, who are the ones who communicate with the what we call the host population and the refugee population. We have lots of stakeholders, so we need to be inclusive in our response. So to answer the two things, situation in Greece is absolutely appalling, is embarrassing. I feel embarrassed as a European. I also feel embarrassed as, you know, talking on behalf of UN Refugee Agency. But let's be, you know, honest. I think that it's more than a question of, you know, operational issue.
We have another question here. Yeah, just an advice. I think it's really beautiful to see this earth wall new construction for the people. And one advice is to say, I don't know what is the thickness of the wall. It's a very technical answer. But it will be better to have like 60 centimeter or 90 centimeter of brick in order to have a good inertia. You know, you can cool the house during the night, and so the coldness will take, by inertia, 12 hours to go inside. So it's during the day it will be cold inside the house. So if it is the case, if it is only one layer of brick, it will be better to have 3 layers of brick. So my advice is to build a large wall, earth wall.
Thank you very much. We were asking for crowd intelligence and wisdom. We got it, isn't it?
No, I'm very happy to take your, you know, your card details, and I can contact the NGO. You know, I think that we're also here to foster, you know, cooperation. And we just held our first Global Refugee Forum. Yeah, they're saying 5 minutes. We just held our first Global Refugee Forum in Geneva, saying that we need a whole of society approach, and we will not be able to do that without the private sector. So, gentlemen, I'll be happy to get your, you know, your account details, and I can put you in touch with the NGO. And probably, you know, I mean, we need innovation. So,
this was
welcome.
For humanitarian aid, huh? Immediate response and needs. Now you take development cooperation. That's the long term. What do we want? We want these countries and population to be self-sustaining, to be independent, etc., as much as possible. So what we need is what I said before, systemic changes. Shouldn't provide what we did earlier on, like drilling a hole when water is needed and creating a fountain and giving. That's not a systemic change. It's still what many actors are doing, including good intended NGOs. We really need to transform the system. Means, yes, you need to supply, but you need to change the regulations, the law. You need to talk to the government. So it's a multi-layer interaction and impact that we need to achieve. And that takes time, efforts, And money is not the key alone by far.
I think we have little time left. What I would like to do is, as I'll take your question just after that, because I think that it's good to close the circle. We talked about art in a non-transactional setting. I think this is the slogan or the motto. I think art has can have a very powerful social impact. So we are very open to ideas, to co-creating things that can really have a long-lasting impact on the minds of people and the well-being of all of us.
If we take our organization, I think it's already quite a number of years now that we try to actually move away or complement our, let's say, knowledge-based, scientific-based rationale. Because the water, of course, we could reduce to figures and say that much runs into that place and that time, etc. But that's not going to solve the issue of integrated water management at the transboundary level. So we're using art and culture. There would have been a symphony of the Blue Peas Orchestra, which we did not manage to let you hear during the break, but you can go on the website and discover that. But beyond that, all the discussion about climate change, global warming, 1.5 or 2.0 degrees, all this is so abstract, it's so distant, it's so invisible that it does not touch people's heart. It doesn't bring around about any behavioral change. Only awareness doesn't help us, It's good to have awareness, but if we don't change our behavior on a daily basis and at the systemic level and at organizational levels, then the world will look tomorrow the same as today from the function-wise, but of course resources will eventually even have been more depleted. So right now we have a Humans and Climate Change Stories project we're supporting, where 12 families over 10 years are being followed. They have 3 generations each on different continents, and we try to understand how they cope with the impacts of climate change. And these are stories. This is photography, this is video, this is audio, interviews, etc. And it helps other decision makers to better understand what are we talking about. Because I've been to a number of these conferences, climate conferences, not in the official delegation, for purpose not. But these people who decide are not confronted with the real problem. So it's too distant, it's invisible. Like many other things, you don't see polluted water, you don't always immediately see polluted air or smell it. You don't see the permafrost that is actually disappearing. So all these things make the problem very distant, and if it doesn't hurt you, if it doesn't touch you, there's nothing that will change. Another initiative we launched is called the SMART, Sustainable Mountain Art, actually based here in Valais, but connecting artists from different places all over the world, bringing them to different contexts, and they're addressing or concerned, let's say like that, they're concerned by 5 big challenges, either by health, by migration, by food security, by climate change, or by water. And then they try to exchange, create new art pieces, and then they share these with schools, with the population here in Switzerland, in their home country, and now also on a South-South basis. These are a few examples where art can really be a trigger of change, of transformation, hopefully. One element, not solving it alone, as was said before. If we don't know the solution, let's ask art. It's not going to work.
We, as the UN Refugee Agency, also feel privileged that we can partner with venues like this one, because for us, art is also a universal language that overcomes this, how would I say, narrative or this xenophobic discourse that we're hearing, this instrumentalization of what refugees are today, refugees, migrants, all the same. So I think that, art has a role to play. I don't know if we still have time, because we can continue talking. No? Okay, well, thank you very much.
We have one last signal we would like to send out and stress. It's the role and the potential of youth, to let them become part of the solution and give them voice. And this is an initiative I launched in 2018, and we're going to continue with that, because I think by connecting youth from all over the world to do actions related to a sustainable development will bring about another piece of the solution. You've got these cards in your bags, just as a little memory. from 35 countries. For me, it is linking up to yesterday's discussion by Adrian. This may be the modern carpet of youth, the global youth, because each of them is an art piece, and they've collected and created a new piece on the glacier of Aletsch. I think this is maybe the next step of bringing people together to have a movement towards sustainable development.